One Piece viewers and consumers across cultures, across generations of watchers, across people who approach this series in wildly different registers. Some analytical, some casual, some watching on a phone at 2 a.m. with no context for what shonen even is, will come to an agreement about one single thing, and one thing only. Bon Clay is the fucking GOAT. He hit me harder than characters with 10 times his screen time. I thought he was comic relief. I was not prepared. You see these sayings everywhere on your timeline regarding this man. There is something structural here. Something was built into this character that produces a near universal result. Bon Clay is the series' most efficient delivery system for the thing One Piece is actually about. And when you actually think about it, it makes sense. One Piece is a story revolving around the nakama, the part where someone shows up for you, completely, for no reason, and it costs them everything, and they don't regret it for a single second. That part. Bon Clay is that part. Distilled, maximized, and delivered in a package so unexpected that your defenses were never up when it arrived. Bon Clay is introduced during the Baroque works era of the Alabasta saga, a criminal syndicate plotting to destroy an entire country. He is one of the highest-ranking officer agents, which in the grammar of Baroque works means he is a serious threat. And then Oda walks him on screen, and he is a man in a pink ballet overcoat, blue medieval garments, heavy mascara, and swan accessories on his back, accessories that are posed in the exact shape of the number 2. He performs okama kempo, swan ballet martial arts, which is exactly as delightful and ridiculous as it sounds. He will sing. He will weep at full volume about friendship. Every single one of these signals says the same thing: comedic villain. He exists to be loud, funny, and then lose to one of the Straw Hats. He will not be relevant after this arc. He will be forgotten, the way most Baroque works agents were forgotten. But here's what Oda does instead. Before the audience finds out that Mr. 2 Bon Clay is a Baroque works agent, before the opposition is established, before the category of enemy is available, Oda has him enthusiastically befriend the Straw Hats on a ship. They dance, they laugh. Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper are completely charmed by his clone abilities and his absolute commitment to the Okama way. The friendship happens first, when his crew finds him and calls him by his Baroque works name, surprising even Vivi who didn't recognize him. The friendship has already happened. It cannot be unmade. This is the first mechanism, and it is the foundational one. The audience likes him before they're allowed to. Liking a character before you have permission to is a specific kind of connection that is much harder to revoke than standard sympathy. Standard sympathy is the product of the narrative telling you to feel something. Pre-established warmth is the product of something having already happened before the rules were clear. When Bon Clay fights Sanji and loses, a loss that in the grammar of the arc represents a villain being defeated, the audience doesn't feel the satisfaction of a villain going down. They feel slightly bad for someone they like. This is an unusual emotion to be having about a Baroque works officer agent. It is entirely Oda's design. The audience's expectation of a throwaway comedic villain is the instrument Oda uses against them. For Bon Clay, we never got a flashback arc. No name trauma. No moment where a young Bentham stood at a grave, or watched a village burn, or made a promise to a dying friend. Bentham's past is unknown, but he was born in the East Blue. Sometime in the past, he found and ate the clone fruit. That is it. That is the entire recorded backstory of one of the series' most beloved characters. For a series that has essentially invented the formula of the backstory reveal. The flashback as the instrument of sympathy, the wound as the source of the trait. This is almost shocking. Luffy's freedom is Roger's laughter, and Ace's brotherhood and Shanks' arm. Zoro's ambition is Queena's grave. Nami's loyalty is Belmer's death. The formula is so consistent, so deeply embedded in how One Piece builds emotional investment that it has become an expectation. If a character matters, their wound will be revealed eventually. And when it is, you will understand why they are who they are. Bon Clay breaks the formula. His love is not a response to damage. It is simply who he is. It is his nature, offered freely, abundantly, apparently without limit, to anyone who happens to be in the room. I want to be precise about why this matters for the emotional response the character produces. You love Nami in part because the narrative told you about Belmer and asked you to. You love Robin in part because O'Hara was shown to you in excruciating detail before Luffy said, "Say you want to live." Bon Clay's love is earned entirely in real time, through action, with no context provided to explain or justify it. Every time he chooses friendship, it is purely because he chose it. He decided you were his friend, and that's the whole sentence. The love is earned forward rather than backward. And this makes the love feel chosen rather than assigned by the narrative, which is a different, and in certain ways more affecting, kind of connection. This is by far one of the most important things about his construction. He is the only major emotional figure in One Piece whose impact does not depend on your retrospective understanding of his damage. You don't need to know where he came from to understand why he does what he does. He does it because the friendship is real to him. That's the complete answer, and he will tell you so directly if you ask. There's no need for any other reasons. We are friends. Now before we go any further, I want to spend some time on the structural center of Bon Clay, specifically his identity as an okama, a gender non-conforming person, and the philosophy that emerges from it. He is the only Baroque Works officer agent without a gender-split partner, because he fills both roles himself. His codename, Mr. Tubonkure, carries both the male pattern number designation and the female pattern holiday name, because the world's existing categories were insufficient to contain him. He uses his own name, the composite name, the name that acknowledges. It takes two designations to approximate who he is, and the philosophy that emerges from this identity, the okama way, is not a catchphrase. It is a worldview. One may stray from the path of a man, one may stray from the path of a woman, but there is no straying from the path of a human. This is the philosophy of someone who has looked at the paths the world provided, found them insufficient, and then descended underneath all of them until they located the single path that remained, the path of a human, which is the path of loyalty, connection, and showing up. I'm not simply saying that this is a positive representation of queerness in shonen manga, though it is. The argument is that this specific identity of the person who has always been slightly outside the categories the world prepared, who has had to locate their sense of belonging through something other than institutional membership or cultural script, is the precise psychological foundation that makes unconditional love available to him. He is free to love without conditions because he stopped outsourcing his sense of belonging to the world's category systems a long time ago. He found the path underneath the other paths, and it turned out to be the one that mattered. Level 5.5 of Impel Down, New Kama Land, which Bon Clay ultimately becomes the queen of, is physically located between the ice of level 5 and the fire of level 6. Between the two extremes, the prison uses to break people. The most uncategorizable person in the series found the place the categories don't reach, the in-between space, the gap between the extremes, and made it habitable. The geography of New Kama Land is a physical argument for the Okama way. Bon Clay, who has always lived in the between, became its queen, and the people who the world refused to categorize built something worth living in. As I have mentioned earlier, when Luffy and Bon Clay first met on a ship between arcs, for no narrative reason other than that they happen to be in the same ocean, they dance, they laugh, they show each other their powers with genuine delight. By the time the audience learns that this man in the ballet outfit is a villain in a criminal organization planning to help destroy a country, the bond has already formed. This is the mechanism behind why Bon Clay's fight with Sanji feels wrong to watch in a way that other fights in the arc do not. Baroque Works agents are supposed to lose to the Straw Hats. That's just common knowledge, and we are supposed to feel the clean satisfaction of that. When Bon Clay loses, it felt murky, something like he didn't deserve that. Even though he was fighting for the villains, even though he was absolutely the enemy in the moment, Oda created the affection first, and then created the opposition, and the affection takes precedence, because it happened first. This sequencing is the first instrument of that love. Bon Clay calls Luffy on a Denden Mushi after the Battle of Alabasta to tell him that he has hidden the Going Merry, kept it from the Marines who were searching the harbor, kept the Straw Hats' ship safe, while the dust of the battle settled. And what stands out here is that he does not frame this as a favor. He does not ask for reciprocation. He says they are friends, and this is what friends do. And then he uses his clone abilities to have his crew impersonate the Straw Hats, drawing the Marine arrest onto themselves, taking the cost of the escape, so that the Going Merry can sail clear. The unrequested quality of this sacrifice is everything. In One Piece, most major acts of loyalty are either called for by the situation or explicitly requested. Bon Clay's are neither. You see, he decided independently, between scenes, without being asked, that the friendship required this. And he did it. The drama is entirely in the audience recognizing what just quietly happened. And that recognition, arriving with a slight delay as you process the full weight of what was casually stated, is the specific emotional texture that Bon Clay produces. He does not perform his love for an audience. He performs it for the friendship. After Alabasta, he disappears, captured by Hina, eventually transferred to Impel Down on a life sentence. The assumption his role is complete, an eventual semi-forgetting. Then Impel Down begins. Luffy arrives at the most dangerous place in the world, Level 3, deep in the starvation hell, with no crew, no backup, chasing the timeline to save Ace. And he hears a familiar voice wearing the face of Zoro, someone performing Zoro. And then the face changes, and it is Bon Clay, alive and dancing in his cell in Level 3 of Impel Down, apparently untouched by the prison's design to break people. Bon Clay's narrative function in Impel Down, on paper, is comedy relief and moral support for Luffy. He sings, he dances, he performs, he brings joy into the most architecturally joyless place in the world. He finds ways to make level 3 starvation heat survivable by treating it as a stage. He calls guards things like darling, while ballet kicking them into walls. The lightheartedness he brings to this arc makes it feel survivable rather than brutal. And that's the exact function he was meant to serve. But the actual cost of that function is what we need to talk about. Because from the moment of reunion, Bon Clay is running on depleted resources, and he never stops depleting them. He takes the hit from Minotaurus that was meant for Luffy, while Luffy is dying from Magellan's poison, shames himself for it, and returns to level 5 through the freezing hell to find Ivankov, the only person in Impel Down who might be able to help. He fights off wolves on level 5 while shirtless, covered in blood, dragging Luffy on a makeshift sled towards someone he has only heard might exist. He finds Ivankov. He does not sleep. He does not treat his own injuries. He plants himself outside the door of Luffy's treatment room and screams support for 20 straight hours, screaming until he spits blood, until his voice is gone, until he is operating on will alone. And then Luffy bursts out of the room healed, and everyone celebrates, and Bon Clay collapses. We all were watching all of this happen. Some of it was funny, some of it was moving, but the accumulation, the way each scene adds cost without the narrative ever saying this is costing him, is the mechanism. By the time the Gate of Justice arrives, we all have been watching Bon Clay be quietly destroyed for an entire arc. The destruction has been performed alongside the comedy, at the same volume, without announcement. We were all laughing at the performance while the sacrifice was already happening underneath it, and you only see the full shape of it when you watch it from the outside, which is what episode 451 forces you to do. This episode was just phenomenal. Bon Clay does not tell Luffy what he is about to do. He slips away while wearing Magellan's face, walks into the control room, orders the guards to open the gates of justice, and waits. He closes the gates after Luffy's ship passes through, destroying the controls so the Marines cannot pursue. He only tells Luffy through a Den Den Mushi once the sacrifice is already irreversible, because he knew that Luffy would have come back for him, and he could not allow that. You only understand what someone was doing for you after the moment has passed. You reconstruct their care retroactively in the space after the fact, when the full shape of what they gave you becomes visible because they are no longer there to give it. Bon Clay did this in real time. Because we're friends, crying, facing Magellan alone, Luffy screaming on the other end, "Why did you do it? Why did you stay?" Because we're friends. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the complete answer. Just because we are friends. The most simple possible statement, and also the most completely devastating one available. You can't be funny and devastating at the same time. I see this being thrown around online sometimes, and I disagree wholeheartedly. The comedy and the sincerity in Bon Clay are not intention. They are the same thing, expressed through the same instrument. It is the depth made fully visible. When Bon Clay cries at full volume, he is actually crying. When he sings about friendship, he actually means the friendship. The performance is authentic. It is the complete external expression of what is happening internally, with no gap between the feeling and its expression. He operates the same way Luffy does in a way, being so authentic, and being the complete expression of his internal thoughts. This is actually rarer in fiction than it sounds. Bon Clay does not modulate. He gives you the whole thing, every time. And the effect of that, built up over an arc, is that when the moment of maximum cost arrives, the audience already trusts that what they are seeing is real. He has never performed something he didn't mean. Every extravagant display of friendship was actual friendship at full volume. Mr. 2, Bon Kure. He is called both because he is both, the male number and the female holiday name, combined in one designation because the world's category systems were insufficient. This is encoding at the level of the name itself. This person does not fit the box the world prepared, and does not try to. The name is the argument before the character has said a word. The clone fruit also manifests as the physical form of who he is too. He can be anyone. He touches a face with his right hand and becomes that person. The power of becoming anyone, in his hands, is deployed almost exclusively in service of someone else's need. He becomes Cobra to help Baroque works. He becomes Zoro to help Luffy find him. He becomes Magellan to open the gates. The power of perfect imitation, deployed in his hands, is not about self-expression. It is about reading what the other person requires and providing exactly that. He can be anyone, and what he chooses to be, consistently, is useful to the person he loves. This is the physical form of the thesis. In a story full of characters who project menace, authority, or mystery, who manage their exterior as a tactical or social instrument, Bon Clay projects joy. He is immediately, fully, visibly himself in every circumstance, with no exterior management, no persona maintained as defense. The extravagance is the honesty. The fullness of Bon Clay's self-presentation, the pinkness, the ballet, the mascara, the full volume weeping, is not incidental to his character. It is an act of daily, sustained assertion. The joy is insistence. He insists on being this, completely, even in Impelled Down, where the architecture was built specifically to make people less of themselves. But what does Bon Clay fear? Is he even scared of anything? He's not afraid of death. He charges at Magellan while weeping and does not stop. Bon Clay's only apparent fear is betraying the friendship, the moment where love requires more than he can give, and he discovers it has a limit. This is why the retreat from Magellan is the only moment in his entire arc where he falters. He ran, and then he could not be with the knowledge that he ran, and he went back. The shame of the retreat is not guilt about an action. It is the terror of having found a limit, of having discovered a place where the friendship required more than he could give in that instant. He goes back not to repair a relationship, but to prove to himself that the limit is further out than he thought. The gate of justice is the final proof. The boundary is very, very far out. His relationship to joy, in Impelled Down especially, proves to us that his joy is an active resistance. The insistence that the person he is cannot be confiscated by the conditions around him. Impelled Down is architecturally, institutionally, explicitly designed to break the people inside it. The levels escalate in their specific cruelty: starvation, heat, cold, wild animals, darkness, despair. The guards are called demon guards. The place is literally titled the world's greatest prison. Bon Clay introduces singing and dancing and full volume emotional expression into this environment, and the prisoners follow him. The capacity to choose joy in a place designed to remove it is the most complete defiance available to a person who cannot fight their way out. He was the Joy Boy before we actually got a Joy Boy. He loves Luffy with the intensity and immediacy of someone who recognizes in another person the thing they most needed to see proven, that being exactly who you are is a viable option. Luffy, who accepts everyone immediately, unconditionally, without requiring adjustment, is the specific kind of person whose love validates rather than requiring you to earn it. Bon Clay has been giving this kind of love to everyone he meets. When he meets someone who gives it back, the bond is instant. He never asks Luffy to return. He never asks to be rescued. He tells Luffy to save Ace. He does not need return to justify what he gives, because the giving is its own justification. He is proof that the most complete versions of love are the ones that don't require justification, not built from shared history, not earned through mutual trials, just decided, maintained, and apparently immune to cost. In a series that argues, through every arc, through every sacrifice, that love is the most important force available to human beings, Bon Clay is the character who demonstrates what love looks like when it has no conditions. Bon Clay is the benchmark in a way. What I mean by that is Luffy makes friends everywhere he goes, and each and every one of them is measured against Bon Clay's standard, and most fall short. He became so loved because he was not supposed to matter, and then he mattered more than almost anyone. Oda buried the depth under layers of comedy and extravagance until the moment you were already inside it and had no defenses left. Because he is funny and warm and fully himself in every circumstance. And those qualities, in the specific sequence Oda deploys them, through the pre-established friendship, through the unrequested sacrifice, through the simplest possible goodbye, produce a character who feels like the person you would most want to know, simply because of what he does, without being asked, at full cost, without regret.